Good morning. So I'm Claire Nakasue from Work Life Hawaii. I am an EAP counselor with Work Life and have been with them, I think, 13 plus years now. My goodness. So yes, welcome to this great service that you have. So Work Life Hawaii itself, some of you might have known it as Hawaii Employee Assistance Services. In years past, we had changed our name to Work Life Hawaii, but we are Hawaii's first EAP, currently the oldest as well. We have approximately 95 contracts in the state of Hawaii, along with yours. We do have statewide coverage for EAP services, with counselors available to provide services on all of the islands. And in fact, I guess one of our new bits of information is that 1 in 7 employees of Work Life, 1 in 7 employees have Work Life EAP as its EAP provider. And so what is EAP, Employee Assistance Program and Services about? It's employee and family counseling services, short-term, brief, solution-focused counseling, as opposed to longer-term therapy, available to you and immediate household members. And it doesn't have to be blood related, right? Folks can be just in your household. You or your household members have up to 4 visits per benefit year. And I believe that runs September to August now. So it just started for you guys in September. So you have 4 visits amongst your household to use until the end of August next year. And then it resets again. We get your 4, okay? Counselors are available after business hours via a toll-free number that we'll share with you as well later. So what do we assist with, right? So our services are provided for, normal, healthy, working individuals with simple and as well as complicated issues that might come up that we all face at various times in our lives, right? All of us have challenges that come up. It can be marital relationship problems, work-related issues, substance use, aging parents, childcare, working with a multitude of the pressures on us in modern daily life. Any other issues that you might want to see a counselor for, a neutral third-party person that you can just tell things to that you don't have any kind of history with, and they don't know anything else about your background and history. All right, other things. So our counselors, we have at least master's degrees, counselors, certified advanced clinicians with expertise in work-related EAP issues. We're licensed in various areas: social work, marriage and family, substance abuse, nursing, mental health, psychology, all different kinds of fields. And as I mentioned before, we do use solution-focused counseling to help people identify options, obtain resources, get referrals, just talk about their concerns. We do make referrals if long-term services or community resources are needed, like beyond the 4 sessions that you might utilize. If it feels like it's going to be beneficial from our perspective and yours to get additional services, then we can do referral to outside private counselors. And we also have bilingual abilities, translation services available. And then more recently, in the past couple of years or so, we've added financial and legal services, which has been a really great addition. For financial consultation, you get 1 30-minute telephone consultation per issue that might come up. And if you choose to use that provider, then you also get a discounted rate to use them afterwards. And Lisa, do you remember what the discounted rate is on that?
It's 25%
25%
of the discounted rate.
Great.
For any of these services that you continue to use.
Great. And then legal consultation as well. Similarly, 1 initial 30-minute consult in person or by telephone per separate legal issue with an attorney. Issues cannot be related to work. Okay, and there again, If you do choose to utilize that provider, that legal provider, then you also get the 25% discount off of their usual fees, the legal fees. And then as well, we have the other additional services that can be very useful, the identity theft, mediation services, tax consult as well. And we'll have time for questions after if people have, yeah. Okay, so our services are always confidential, right? We hold that very strictly. If anybody asks whether someone's receiving services from us, we always say, I'm sorry, we cannot confirm nor deny that individual receiving services with us. The limits, of course, to the confidentiality would be if someone is having imminent safety issues, right? They're about to harm themselves, about to harm somebody else. There's abuse of a minor or vulnerable adult occurring, right? Then we have to act upon that in our capacity, but it's very confidential. The only information that is provided to like your employer is that, 100 people from the credit union use the services. They came in for family issues, work-related issues, individual adjustment, but no names are ever attached to that. Yeah, so it's very confidential. And then it's voluntary, right? You use the services on your own. And definitely what's great, really great about it is it's free to you, right? Your companies are paying for their services via contract, but for you as employees, their services are free. So how does Work Life Hawaii help? How do we help with situations? I could have some illustrations and examples here of how we really do help folks. So one of the big issues is coping with change, right? That comes in, and we've been seeing a lot of this lately, especially because of the pandemic and COVID, right? People's lives have been changed dramatically in a lot of ways. We have all gone through that in terms of how we work, where we work, what's happening with our kids, how we're living our lives. And so this has been a really big one. It's always been a big one, but even more so nowadays. Change is often challenging to go through. Certainly harder when it's something that's not something that we didn't choose, right? Imposed upon us from the outside, but sometimes brings opportunities that you wouldn't have otherwise. An example of that might be, like for me, one of the things is because gyms had shut down and I was no longer able to do some of my physical activities that I like to do. I ended up learning how to play pickleball. I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but it's kind of like a cross between ping pong and tennis. And so I ended up being able to play that outside, outdoors, and love it, and was still able to stay physically active. So that was a great opportunity that I probably would not have otherwise done. All right, so let's get into some real examples of how specifically work life does help. So here's employee A, a single man who's raised on the continent, has lived in Hawaii for a long time, lives alone. Because of the pandemic shutdown, his work was just pretty much cut off, right? He couldn't really work in his previous industry. So he had to pivot completely to a different industry and a totally new job. He's always had issues with anxiousness while he was young. He had some recent car problems that came up, had to buy a new car. He was adjusting to his new job and his new position. He was finding recently that he was having trouble waking up in the middle of the night with anxious thoughts racing through his mind and not being able to get back to sleep. And he was starting to worry that, wow, if I'm not getting sleep, how's this going to impact my job, right? My job performance at work. And so he'd come to us and looking for support. So how were we able to help with Mr. A? So one of the things that we do sometimes is assessment. Now, this is not diagnostic, right? We're not diagnosing anybody with any kinds of conditions at all. But we do use some tools and surveys at times to help us determine, the level of acuity with certain things. So in this case, we do have an instrument that we can use for anxiousness. And so we use that to kind of assess where he might be, with that area. Provided information, education about anxiousness and thoughts, how the sympathetic nervous system gets really activated into fight, flight, or freeze, right? And then how we have to engage the parasympathetic system to do rest and digest, improve that, and how to do that. Solution finding, helping him identify, well, what are the things, when are you feeling calm, or what things kind of seem to help? What are your outlets? And trying to identify what would be best for him. And in his case, he identified that, what would really help would be coping techniques, right? Like for when I'm having anxious thoughts, what are some immediate things that I can do? So, work life was able to help him to learn how to do some breathing exercises, some relaxation techniques as well, to help with those anxious feelings and thoughts. And then referrals and resources, right? We had determined, because we have a limited number of sessions and it's meant to be brief services, we determined, both of us agreed that that it would be beneficial for him to continue on getting ongoing support, with the anxiousness, and continue the progress that he had made. And so we were able to make some referrals for him for outside services so that he could continue with that. And then in terms of resources, he liked to use apps on his phone. And so we kind of came up with some different apps that you could use for breathing and relaxation, like the Calm app is one that people like to use, quite a bit. So that was something that was really helpful to him. And then of course, counseling and emotional support, him just being able to talk out his feelings, to someone who's just, listening completely and without judgment was very helpful to him. Improving work-life balance. Okay, so this is a big one too, right? This has always been a big one. And this is what we're all about in terms of being Work-Life Hawaii and EAP is, how do we balance our such busy lives with our kids and our work and all of our other activities that we might have outside the home, and how do we balance all that? Okay, so here's an example of employee B, a 35-year-old local woman, married, her and her husband both working full-time between home and office, depending on the waves of the pandemic and office restrictions or not. She has a second job. There's school-age children involved too. And so there was a lot going on in terms of the kids, right? They're in school. They're not in school. They're in school. they're at home. Oh, someone tested positive at school. And so now they're having to quarantine for 10 days and then having to go back. So, I'm sure everybody has been experiencing these kinds of challenges. Her own workplace was undergoing lots of changes, turnovers and vacancies, short staffing. And so she was feeling like, normally I'm a highly competent person who copes with everything, solves problems, but finding that lately it's been a lot more challenging to do that. And so she was starting to have trouble falling asleep, getting to sleep, and kind of worried about that, and feeling sort of frazzled at the edges, feeling overwhelmed, kind of hitting that wall. Okay, and so how are we able to help? So one thing that we like to do is collaborative solution finding, right? We really work with clients to try to establish goals of what could really help with the situation. Yeah, what could work. And so we did a lot of that, gaining perspective. She was really struggling with the fact that, why can't I handle this? I'm usually, strong and awesome and super competent. And, why can't I be there? And so gaining perspective that we are in extraordinary times, right? And we are not going to be functioning the same way, right? We're having to engage and employ new and different ways of coping, things that we haven't done before, to do all of our responsibilities that we want to get done. And so that really helped to understand that, everybody is struggling, so don't judge yourself. Yeah. With the collaborative solution finding, we found out that she wasn't doing her usual outlets in her self-care, right? She was usually super physically active, getting massage services, but all of that during the pandemic had fallen to the wayside, right? And she wasn't doing that any longer. So we developed goals around wellness and self-care planning, trying to get back into the physical activity again, and then the counseling and emotional support. Just by people being able to talk about their feelings, express their feelings to someone that they might not feel comfortable doing with friends, right? Or maybe it's hard to do it with friends or family members. A lot of us feel like we can do it, we can take care of our own stuff and we don't want to share or feel vulnerable with others. And so EAP is a great place to be able to do that. And so that was helpful for her. Right. And so the third big one that comes up for us is family and relationships, right? Our partners, our spouses, our children, our parents, trying to care for our parents. Maybe we have conflicts with siblings, the whole array of different ohana issues that can come up. So here's an example of a couple. A local man is late 50s, full-time field engineer. He's lived with the same female partner for about 20 years or so. They both talked about having a really dysfunctional relationship, right? There were suspicions about extramarital affairs that may or may not have been happening, concerns about when someone was drinking alcohol heavily, that there would be anger that would come out. And both were just very unhappy and at their wits' end. The man in the situation had expressed thoughts of self-harm and was trying to cope by heavy alcohol use. And both were feeling very ambivalent about staying in the relationship and about what to do with the situation. So some of the ways that we were able to work with them is certainly in this case, assessment, for him, what is the level of the alcohol use, right? How is that affecting things, helping him with that. And turned out he did have quite a severe alcohol use issue, right? Communication tools, we talked about, discussed, what are different communication styles? How do we communicate best in conflict kinds of situations? And learning those tools, identifying, weighing options, right? What are the pros and cons of staying together or splitting up, right? What are your different values? What are your different goals for the relationship and for your life? Referral to community resources. Okay, so in both situations, both of them really had a lot of anxiousness, a lot of feeling down, possibly depressed. And so a referral was really necessary for both of them. So they were both able to get connected to therapists on the outside. He was giving resources in the community for alcohol use as well. And then it actually turned out that one of them needed a legal assistance referral because it ended up being that there were some property and pets issues involved, and they really needed to understand what their legal rights and consequences were about, separating. And so they were able to take advantage of that. And so that was really helpful. And of course, the counseling and emotional support during the time that there was a lot of high emotions, and then they needed to, before they got to their longer term services. Yeah, so these are some examples of ways that we work with folks, and there's tons more ways and scenarios, of course, that come up, but these are just some more concrete examples for you to understand about how we work. So in summary, the services are available for employees and family members. Concerns, of course, can be personal related, they can be work related as well. And we do encourage you folks to really use these services in a preventive way, right? Like in that last scenario, I know it was a little, it's pretty intense. And we're hoping that people come in way before it gets to that kind of level of situation, right? And using it more as a overall health and wellness plan. Like in the things we're going through right now are real challenging. And rather than waiting till, you know, okay, I'm really stressed out and I can't handle stuff anymore, I'm about to quit my job. You know, come in way before that and check in about, I wonder how I'm doing just wellness wise, right? In all the different areas, my physical health, my spiritual health, my family life, my work life. How can I be better, and where can I do things differently, right, to function better? So really encourage that proactive management. So our availability and accessibility, it's real easy to make an appointment for a session. You call that number there on the screen, the 543-8445. That number is based on Oahu, but we use it for all of the islands services. So we call that number. We also have toll-free after business hours number, the 1-800-994-3571. And we can usually get folks into, we try as hard as possible to get folks in within 3 days to be seen after they made a call to us. We have this awesome website that you can also visit for resources, tips on how to handle things if you want to, if you prefer to read as opposed to seeing somebody. Yeah, so this is a great benefit for you all, and really encourage you to utilize it as much as possible. Any questions that anybody might have on anything?
I don't see any questions in the chat, but
Mhm.
so Claire, I have a question. So when
Sure.
when you're assisting a couple like employee C, do each of them have 4 sessions each, or do they share the 4 sessions?
If for your folks' benefit, they share the 4 sessions. Is that right, Lisa? Oh, you're
Sorry.
shaking your head. Sorry.
Yeah, so for the credit union, they get 4 sessions each.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's
I'm so
4
sorry.
sessions for the employee, no, and 4 sessions for the each individual family member. And that is a continued customer thing. We don't do that anymore. So that's, credit union's been with us for a long time. So that is their model.
So that's awesome.
Yeah,
If you get
so you have a really good plan
4 each, yeah.
for
That's
each.
spectacular.
Thank you, Tracy, for asking that.
Yes, thank you, Tracy.
And one other thing on the toll-free, just to elaborate on what Claire said. So our regular business hours are from 8 to 5. Anytime from 5 p.m. to 8 a.m., you can call the toll-free number and you will get a live master's level counselor that will address any immediate needs. They won't give you a session, but they will be able to address any immediate needs. And then they will let us know, and we will contact you the next business day to follow up.
I think you answered the question in the chat. So there being no other questions, I think I want to thank Claire and Lisa for the presentation. And then on Thursday, we'll have the supervisor manager orientation, which is it's a session that will help us to identify when we need to do a formal referral. So if that's it, we'll end the session, and thank you, Claire and Lisa, and have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.